Thank you very much for making a date on the marketplace. Welcome back. Now, ratings agency Standard & Poor's is warning of some serious challenges for government finances in the coming months. This is despite revising the country's credit ratings to B and a stable outlook. George Yafe has more in the following report.
Standard & Poor's in a statement said the action to review the country's credit worthiness was based on improved regulation of the banking sector and measures taken to match the amount of money in circulation with economic activities. It is, however, warning that government may struggle to secure the required funds to finance planned projects. This is because of challenges with revenue mobilization and dwindling returns from cocoa and oil production, a development that could affect the end-of-year macroeconomic targets. Giving Ghana a B on its credit ratings should mean that the agency is a little bit optimistic that measures are being implemented to firmly stabilize the economy, or let's say the country is in a better position not to default on its loans. This could impact on the cost of borrowing for the country and even servicing existing loans.
Meanwhile, the AGI says government should not be complacent with the current B rating. CEO of the association, Seth Chuma Kwabwa, emphasized government should do more to improve the economy.
These international rating agencies are well known, and whether you like it or not, people depend on it. People rely on their information to take decisions and in pricing their financial products. So definitely, if you are being, your rating is improving, it's positive, and I think we should always be aiming at that because they are quite transparent in the things they do. So once there's transparency and there's improvement, we should welcome it, and we should work harder to make sure that our ratings even improve better. The fact that if you move from one level to a slightly higher level means that you are recovering, but you have not reached there yet. It may have been at maybe a stable, place, but you need to move to another notch where it really helps in reducing interest rates. And don't forget that when ratings are done, it doesn't overnight change the dynamics. It takes a little while for the market to respond to it. It is a consistency in the improvement that is very critical. So the fact that in one rating you have some improvement does not mean that overnight your cost of credit will come down because there's some slight improvement. What is important, that let's be consistent. Whatever we did to have that improvement, let's work at it to get even more improvement. And if you have that for 3-4 consistent ratings, then you know that you are reaching a stable place, and then you get the reductions.
Do you expect any implications for industry? Because I asked you the question about industries because of the long-term capital that you look out for, and sometimes not even with local banks, some straddles into international banks as well. Is this something that you're optimistic that if these things are sustained, then industries could start benefiting from these commentaries and these actions on the country?
Yes, definitely the industry will stand to benefit if it's consistent, because bear in mind that individual industries may not even go out there and borrow from the international market. They may not have the capacity to do so, but our banks do. And when our banks are borrowing from the international market, some of these risk factors are taken into account. So the country's rating is very important. And then also government borrowings from the international market is also highly determined. The interest rate is highly determined by these ratings. So if government is getting credit cheaper, okay, and our financial institutions are also getting credit cheaper, then when it's being passed on to the individual companies or industries, then they also will also get it cheaper. So it's a cycle, and at every level you need to have improvement, and I'm sure that definitely that will impact positively on local financing costs.
All right, so we want to stay on this topic a little longer, and I've been joined in the studio by economist from Data Bank, Courage Marty, to actually dissect the issues and tell us the implications on the economy. Good afternoon, Courage, and welcome back.
Thanks for having
to the studio.
Thanks.
Now, tell me, how did you first take this particular credit revision?
Yeah, for me, it was long coming, except that it was a pleasant surprise because I didn't see this soon coming in terms of an upgrade, right? Because last year, when we noticed some significant improvements from monetary policy as well as fiscal policy, and the kind of reprofiling that the government was doing, partly with issuing longer dated bond to create fiscal space and reduce the rollover risks, we felt that that was going to feed into investors perceiving us in a favorable light, and it was going to be only a matter of time before the credit or ratings agencies begin to improve our rating, which will mean that when we go on the market as a sovereign to borrow, investors should perceive us in a positive light and reduce the risk premium that they charge us.
Now, within which period, did this particular revision, cover?
Well, when you look at the reports, they looked at what happened significantly in 2017, but they dated back beyond that time. And with their emphasis on monetary policy, I would want to imagine that they look at the trajectory of events from 2014, 2015 to date. Okay. Now, when you look at the way the market interest rates behaved vis-a-vis the policy rates in early part of 2015, monetary policy had lost significant credibility in the early part of 2015 because at the time you had a situation where the interbank interest rate was quoted at 25% and the policy rate was quoted at 21%, such a significant divergence. Now, as a central bank, you should be the lender of last resort. When the market could not find funds on the market amongst themselves, they should come to you. And if they have to come to you, they should pay the price. But here's a case where they will pay lower than they would have paid on the market. So you've lost credibility in that sense. Okay. Over time, we've seen the policy rate adjusting now above the market rate at 17%, and the interbank rate is around 16%. So then you are the lender of last resort. If you come to you, we will pay the price. So you can see that credibility of monetary policy has improved, and that has fed into the upgrade that they gave to us. But they cited weaknesses in our fiscal account.
Exactly. I really wanted to find out because our fiscal, account has not been too good, and I thought that this particular rating would focus more on it. But before then, it also highlights on something like transfer and convertibility issues, which we're not so clear about. What exactly is it talking about? Because we also had an improved rating on that section.
Yeah. So we'll come to the fiscal account as you said, but on the transfer and convertibility, essentially what they are saying is that your FX exposure when you come into Ghana City from foreign currency position is lower now. The risk you're exposed to is lower now, partly because the current account is has narrowed over time, and also because the build-up of gross reserves has increased. Currently, we have gross reserves that has increased to some $7 billion, equivalent to 3.9 months of import cover. So then the reserves position today, compared to the last time we downgraded Ghana to B-, when reserves was even struggling to hold three months. Now the reserves has improved. The current account has narrowed. Deficit has narrowed. And so the risk you are exposed to in terms of transfers, international transfers and convertibility of FX is lower now, hence the upgrade.
Even though the foreign, the forex or the foreign exchange rate is not too good in favor of the city.
And so this partly explained why, for me, it was a pleasant surprise, because if you look at the reports, now, in my skimming through of the report, I didn't see where they made reference to the externally induced pressure on not just the Ghana cedi but emerging market currencies, right? Which the Ghana cedi is suffering, and that also increases the FX rate any investor would face on the market. And of course, our yields on the market have adjusted to reflect that. Because if you go on the treasury bond market today, yields have increased from 16% in the first quarter today about 20% on the market. So, and in fact, last week's treasury bill issuance resulted in an increase in the 182-day bill from 13.8 to 14.1. The 1-year note has also increased from 14.5 to 15%. So you can see that the FX depreciation is being priced into yields or interest rates on the market, but that was left out or missing in the report.
Now, another concern is that all these figures, bright, ratings, do they really reflect the situation on the ground?
So one-off may not reflect, right? You need to sustain the gains you are making and deepen it to the point where investors see that at this level, the risk is now firmly contained, right? So at the moment, what we've seen is a significant thumbs up to monetary policy, but a cautious outlook to fiscal policy. Now, given this balance of risk, it'd be difficult to see an immediate impact on the cost of credit, right, on the cost of capital. So we need to sustain it and extend that improvement significantly to fiscal policy or fiscal account, government finances, and then we start seeing it reflecting in decline in interest rates and the cost of capital.
But do you think it actually took, effect of this our debt situation currently as a country, because it's been worsening for some time now?
It did actually. In fact, it quoted that when you look at the foreign investor holdings of our debt, is quite significant and higher than their average, right? Because our FX denominated debt is 53% of our total debt. And when you consider the non-resident component, in addition to the FX denominated debt, is about 70 or over 70% of our total debt portfolio. Now, the implication is that this depreciation in the currency could worsen or increase our debt burden. However, where they missed it was that if you look at page 6 of the report, their belief is that the exchange rate was stable. And to that extent, they failed to analyze the impact of the current depreciation, because currently the exchange rate is less than stable, right? So if you took into account recent development, I'm sure they would have realized that that particular side is missing, or variable is missing in the equation.
Now, the report also took into consideration public finances. What's your take on that? Yeah,
I think it is fair. It's fair to note that public finances is improving, but it's really not on a strong footing. And one of the reasons why we are still vulnerable to these external shocks, right? Because if public finances were so strong and robust, we wouldn't need to rely significantly on these external investors to bring in their funds, and we will not be exposed to their decision to reverse or flow out the capital. So then it means that public finances has improved, but it's still very soft and needs to strengthen up. And so for me, I think it's a fair assessment. But again, it also shows that the report also shows that there is some commitment to improve it. Like they noted that the government has decided, with proposal to Parliament, to cap the budget deficit at 5% of GDP. Hopefully, that will be done. Hopefully, the government will improve the revenue side, and hopefully they'll continue to contain the expenditure pressures, particularly post-IMF, and then we'll see better things.
Now, before you go, finally, would this particular, ratings have any bright effect in the eyes of, foreign investors necessarily?
Well, the short-term dynamics did not show, but in the medium to long term, when other rating agencies like Fitch and Moody's comes on the bandwagon, we should see that a favorable effect. But in the short term, the market dynamics doesn't show it. Like I said earlier, the T-bills for 182-day moved up last week. The one-year note moved up also from 14.5 to 15%. Even on the secondary bonds market, yields have climbed now to around 20% on the market. So in the short term, it's not yet being reflected. What it means is that we need to sustain the gains. Then investors will start reducing the risk premium that they charge.
Many thanks for your time, Courage Mate. And Courage Mate is an economist with DataBank. He's been sharing his thoughts on the current ratings by Standard & Poor's, putting Ghana at B from B-. Now, away from that, all things being equal, the merger between Sahel Sahara and Omnibanks is expected to be completed by October this year. This comes after the Bank of Ghana last month approved the proposed merger of the two banks, with a caution that the final approval will only be considered after all the necessary documentation has been submitted for review. So can the two banks complete their documentation a month from today? There's more in this report.
Even though the central bank is said to have given the two banks up to the end of December this year to submit all necessary documentation on the merger and also to meet the minimum capital requirement, the banks are optimistic to meet the regulator's requirement 2 months clear ahead of the schedule. This is because Sahel Sahara Bank last week received some $60 million support from their group, showing their commitment to fill the shortfall in meeting the minimum capital requirement of 400 million cedis. This leaves the new bank, which is likely to be named Omni Sahel, with a shortfall of $25 million, which Joy Business understands will be met by the close of this month. With their capital adequacy ratio above the BOG's minimum capital requirement of 10%, the two banks have never received liquidity support from the central bank. As of June 30, 2018, Omni Bank had a total asset size of 603 million cedis, with a total loan volume of 223 million cedis against customer deposits of 450 247 million cedis, while Sahel Sahara also has a total asset size of 623 million cedis, a total loan volume of 286 million cedis, and customer deposits of 477 million cedis, which is a little above that of Omnibank's. When merged, the combined entity will have 46 branches spread across the country with over 150,000 customers and a total staff strength of 614. With the focus of the new entity still going to be on SME markets due to the huge potential and impact on the economy of Ghana, the two banks have agreed to ensure that there will be no job losses for permanent staff due to their merger.
Meanwhile, Deputy Managing Director of Sahel Sahara Bank, Dr. Kojo Abuaji Deborah, has been commenting on the proposed merger between Sahel and Omnibank, which will become operational after the Bank of Ghana finally okays the marriage. He spoke exclusively with my colleague Norvan Akwahiford.
Trading as Sahel Sahara Bank. Sahel Sahara Bank is a trading name. Our name is BSIC. Anglophone of English people will call it BSIC, but it's BSIC. BSIC is a French, so we have BSIC Togo, BSIC Benin, BSIC Cote d'Ivoire, BSIC Burkina Faso. We are largely 10 in Francophone countries, and Anglophone is Ghana and Gambia, and the Arab zone is Sudan and Libya. So we are represented in 14 countries. But the point here is that BSIC, or Sahel Sahara Bank, is literally a local bank. For this merger, let me go straight to the point. We started trying to answer your question on the GN position.
Yeah, I was first. To look at this merger issue. First of all, we heard that you initially were in talks with GN and Premier Bank. What led to the pullout from that talks?
We never signed anything with Premium. We don't have anything to do with Premium. We had discussion with GN. GN had discussion initially with Premium and then came to X. So we never had anything to do with the Premium Bank. GN came to X. We started the discussion. The question was, each bank was supposed to furnish each other with the audited financial statement. Unfortunately, my team was given only the draft. So they came back to us and said we were given only the draft. So we went back and said we should be given the audited financials. And it wasn't coming. So we thought we went back to the shareholders. And time was going. So we thought things were not in the good faith. And for that simple reason, we wrote back that we should suspend the whole thing and discontinue the process. And we furnished the central bank. At the same time, we had expression of interest from Omnibank that they see BSIC brand and they see us as a local bank because we're not supposed to pay taxes. We are supposed to support the Ghanaian economy. For that reason that we saw each other as a local bank, that we should come together to be able to have a better marriage, because this is not a forced marriage. The two institutions, local two banks, have agreed to come together and marry. So we went back to Bank of Ghana that we've seen this. Bank of Ghana asked us, what about the GN? And then we said we've written, and therefore we've furnished Bank of Ghana. And Bank of Ghana understood this.
Let me ask you, when you had the discussion with GN, did you write to the Bank of Ghana for that initial no objection approval?
Yes, we did, and we never had that. We were waiting. Bank of Ghana never came back to us.
Did it include the Premium Bank?
We never saw, because like I said, we never signed anything with the Premium Bank. It was GN that signed MOU with Premium. We signed MOU with GN, and when things were not working well, we went to Bank of Ghana. Bank of Ghana didn't come back to us because you can't go to the public. All what we saw was that information were out there where we have not received any no objection from Bank of Ghana. For that reason that we thought things were moving fast, and we can move faster than your regulator when the regulator has not given you the no objection. So we just went back straight away to the regulator and said, look, we are pulling out. We want to discontinue and suspend the whole process, which we did. And Bank of Ghana requested for what are our capital plan, which we said, look, this is the new one. And then straight away, Bank of Ghana gave us no objection. And we are happy about it. We've started. Heads of Terms, which is the Memorandum of Understanding, has been signed. And in it, there's a beauty in it that we have agreed that both the permanent staff and the contract staff are supposed to keep their jobs for the next 36 months, which is 3 years. So we did indicate in it that nobody is going to lose his job.
So as far as this marriage, as you refer to, is concerned, nobody for the next 36 months, that's 3 years, will lose the job. But doesn't mean that after the 36th month, people may likely be asked to go home. And what would be the circumstance that could lead to that?
Well, it depends on performance management. If you understand, performance management is where you are given a task to perform. I mean, there's no Father Christmas. So you need to ensure performance. Again, ethics. So we expect that people may behave with the highest integrity. And therefore, because we're dealing with customers' money, and therefore banks revolves around trust and confidence. And therefore, if customers give you money to take good care of it, and the next day they come and that money is not there. So within this period, we expect that people may behave with the highest integrity. Now, once people can keep these ethics in the banking, we hope that.
Now, away from that, Managing Director of the Ghana Airports Company Limited, John Dechem Atifa, says a high maintenance culture will be practiced following the establishment of the Terminal 3 of the Kotoka International Airport. Charles IT has more in this report.
Terminal 3 of the Kotoka International Airport was fully operational on September 15th, following its full completion as at June 29th, 2018. The opening of the ultra-modern terminal saw hundreds of passengers in both arrival and departures departments of the terminal go through what many have alluded to as a smooth and stress-free procedure. Speaking to Joy Business at the departures hall of Terminal 3, Managing Director of the Ghana Airports Company Limited says T3 by all standards will be sustained by a high maintenance culture.
We should maintain it and keep it as we've always, as it is, so that they continue to enjoy it. So that is our hope, and we are putting in all the necessary measures to ensure that this airport stays as clean, as neat, and as exciting as it is today. Some of the shops, we still have some shops uncompleted, but it is our hope that by the 2nd of October, when it's officially commissioned, all those shops will be ready.
The assurance by the MD follows concerns of maintenance culture by the Deputy Trade Minister, Carlos Ahenkra, who earlier toured the terminal in an inspection exercise with some customs officials.
The letter I'd like to say to the users of the airport, first and foremost, is to take good care of the facility. What you see here is not going to last us a lifetime. It can only last if we introduce a culture of maintenance to ensure that this thing stays for our children's children to come and see.
Joy Business got in touch with the team lead of contractors of the terminal, Mappa Construction MNG Holding, Vishalan Govinda. He explained what went into the construction of the $250 million Terminal 3.
We've added expertise and we partnered GSL in terms of that. And the journey was a very fruitful one. I mean, as you can see, we opened the terminal. We're facilitating passengers, and it's just magnificent. It's something that showcases Accra. It's something that showcases Ghana. It puts Ghana on the map.
The Kotoka International Airport Terminal 3 is expected to be officially commissioned by the President on October 2. For Joy Business, Charles Aite reporting.
And that's a wrap on the marketplace for today. But before we finally go, if you are looking forward to either build or buy a house, then the JoyNews Western World Habitat Fair is the place to be. You'll be presented with options to find a place you may call a home. The fair takes place this week from Friday 21st to Sunday 23rd September at the Providence Event Center close to the Trade Fair Center at Labadi. The gates will be opened from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. each day. And on that note, we wrap up Marketplace. My name is Emmanuel Abuaji. We have a good afternoon.